Hello, everyone. Welcome to Marginal Support. I am your host, Andre Lindy, where support is anything but marginal. And today I have a pretty cool guest today, Kevin Steele. Thank you for coming on. Can you just give yourself a quick introduction?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Kevin Steele. I am the Director of Support and AI Ethicist for the Arbinger Institute. I've been in support and services my entire professional career, coming close to 30 years, and I'm excited to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here. So, tell me a little about your company because that's a pretty cool sounding name. And I think you threw a little bit of AI in there. So, can you expand on that a little?
Sure. So, the Arbinger Institute, we do a lot of work directly with companies who are struggling to get really unified culture in place. You have conflict between teams, on teams, etc. And we actually have a method called the outward mindset that we teach both your everyday worker as well as leadership on how to reframe the interactions you're having with people and to start seeing them as people and understand that success for yourself is not necessarily success for others if your impact is negative. And so you have to work around to find a way to actually identify what success can look like for the people, not only for you and your team, but the people you connect with and impact.
This
Um,
is super. This is super interesting because it's not your traditional kind of support. You're supporting humans
it is
instead of like
not.
supporting technology.
It is not. I've spent most of my profession in tech, SaaS, that kind of stuff, and to move into a company where you're dealing more with people, the support that we build primarily goes to our portal and the digital experiences we have, but that directly touches every participant, every person learning. And so, in some ways, it's even more critical that the digital side of the experience does not deflect from their opportunity to learn more. Uh, yeah, and when it comes to the AI side of things, yeah, everybody's getting into AI. There's lots of reasons and lots of push for it, but for us, the Arbinger's mission is to turn the world outward by bringing humanity back to the workplace. And while we are using AI and working with AI, we found that it is really important that we make sure how we use it internally as a company and how we look to implement it into products does not detract from the mission. Because there are times where if you just throw AI at something, it can become soulless. It can be just like a proxy for a human. And while AI can mimic empathy, and what it can do that is like, I don't want to talk to an AI as my psychologist, but it can do coaching and give you examples. So like there's a use for it. But I work with our leadership team and other members in the company to make sure that the way we use AI is going to have the right impact and aligns with who we are.
That's very interesting, actually. I mean, just because the way you're having to blend basically how's AI going to affect the workplace? Is it going to dilute the people they're working with? Is it going to replace them? Obviously, we don't want people replaced, but it's a very delicate position we have to be in right now with the way people are going head forward into AI and saying, "Oh, it's going to replace everything," right? So it's good when we take a lighter touch and step back and say, "Really, what are we using this for?" So I think I applaud you on that. That's excellent. What I,
It's Pandora's box, but and so it's already out. Like we're not going to stuff this thing back in the box, but that means you got to get to know it, get familiar with it, and then that way, if you get ahead of that, then you can actually direct it in the workplace that you're in, whether or not you're a leader or an individual contributor.
well said. I'm curious for you, someone who's been in tech, you said, for about 30 years.
Yeah.
What skills or what learnings have you brought from the tech world into this personal space, and how has that been effective for you?
Okay, so I love that question because uh, there's kind of two. I'll break this into two parts. There's one of going from, big company, big tech, SaaS into a company that's not necessarily technology driven. But the funny thing is regardless of the product you're selling, the problems are the same. They show up at different stages of company development. So I've been able to take a lot of both the technical challenges that I've come through in developing and supporting a variety of SaaS products, and actually been able to identify the hurdles that we have in a fairly new company when it comes to digital delivery. For the AI thing, the thing that I've learned about it, especially when I'm talking to people who are new to AI and they're like, well, I don't really know how to take advantage of it. Like, what do I do? And it's like you have to go slow to go fast. And the best thing you can do with AI, instead of just like a lot of people that jump in, they start building things. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to try this. And that's fun. But I would say that the most powerful thing you have going into the use of AI, whether as a product, as a chatbot, as a series of daemons, however you want to connect it, what you know is going to be the biggest boon. So the information I have working in ITSM through Landesk Ivanti, the information I know about how interconnected systems work on disaster recovery from StorageCraft, and LMS systems from LearnUpon. Like, these are all different places that I've existed, and I haven't just learned the product, I've learned lessons. And so when I want AI to do something, I want to pull back as much as I can the information of those lessons and say, hey, if I'm asking AI to coach people on something, that means this AI is going to interact with people. And what do humans do? And honestly, we're humans are silly, and we test things, and we're biased, and we're prejudiced, and we have things that we don't even know. And so it's like, try things that people don't. You wouldn't think in a professional setting, somebody wouldn't say this, and you'll find ways to break that stuff. Like, remember the lessons you've already learned and how people just use things. And when I ask AI to build something for me, the more information, the more context, the more experience of my experience I give it, the better the initial outcome will be. It's kind of like garbage in, garbage out, but good in, great out.
It's funny that you say garbage in, garbage out, because that's the phrase I've been using with a lot of people when we talk about when people first start jumping into AI and they really don't know. I actually had this thought last night that people who jump into AI and are doing it correct right now are kind of thinkers. They are people who know how to visualize something in their head, but they've never really been able to create an output because they never had the tools. But now with the AI, now that they can take everything that's up in their head and type it out, now they're really being able to really utilize AI because they can visualize what they want and they can verbalize what they want, right? I'm curious, is this kind of what you're talking about, how when you go into AI, you still have to have a clear picture and you still have to clearly define what you want out of the system?
I think that's spot on. And I'll use myself as an example. The first time I went to college, I was going in for a computer science degree to develop. And what I learned really quickly is I can't stand programming. I can do it, I just don't enjoy it. And what AI has brought to me is that I've been able to develop applications and other functions simply by talking to it and having it, like the return on investment, the instant gratification that I see on it. Man, that's a strong drug. Just, being blunt. But I think the point that I'm really trying to get at is not only the more information you give it up front, but the more clarity you give it up front is going to be most important. It's going to be the thing that kickstarts whatever you're building in AI. And for example, One of the things that I've run into, I had to develop a quality assurance for AI application, because most QA is done on an app basis. It's a very deterministic model. Click this button, it does this. Whereas when you're talking to AI, because it's non-deterministic, you never know what you're going to get to a certain extent. So you have to test it against the good, the things you want it to do, the bad, the things you don't want it to do, and the ugly, which is the area that wasn't great, but it doesn't fail. And so I had to build this application using these testers in this app. And what I found is that I went out and built a product requirements document that defined what I needed it to do. And then I fed that information into the AI and said, hey, here's a description of what I want. And some people are like, well, I could write the product requirements document. It's true. Like within AI, you can do that and then feed it back to itself. But like I actually wrote it out myself. I had to think about what I wanted and what the goal was. And then by feeding into AI, I ended up with an initial product that was actually leaps and bounds beyond what I was expecting, and have been able to work from that. So it's like the more you put of yourself into it, knowing what you want and telling it what you want, it's going to go further on that first iteration than it would if you just say, hey, I need an app that will test out a coaching chatbot kind of thing. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, it's just like if you give it vagueness and you're like, I want an app to do, I don't know, maybe this or that, it's going to give you, like you said, garbage. It's not going to be optimum. But what I've noticed in my uses with Claude specifically, when I'm doing projects, when I give it a very defined initial prompt and I give it clear expectations, then when it gives it the first iteration, it's almost there. And then I say, oh, you need to do this or you need to do this, right? And then you tweak. But if you have a strong foundation and a strong start, then when you start to build your products or you start to build your reports, it's going to be a lot smoother because you've already visualized what it needs to be. And if you put that visualization pen to paper or screen to whatever, right? I mean, but yeah, I get what you're saying. What I'm really curious is when you take this approach and you now go into your clients and you start to talk to them, are all of them like AI, or do you have to kind of like have them take a step back and like, let's just take the human element first and then we'll bring in AI in a little bit later?
That is, yeah. First, I do hear the AI. Oh, how do we implement this? Are you an AI first? Like, I cringe at the idea of AI first because AI first usually. Anyway, there's a lot of assumptions that could be made there. My recommendation for anybody I'm working with who is AI, we need an AI. We need an AI product. We need to do more in AI. The first question I'm going to be asking is what problem or problems are you trying to solve? What do you spend your time doing all the time out of habit? There's usually two ways to test this. What do you do a lot that can be automated? And the other thing that is actually more impactful in the long run is what are your biggest headaches? What are the things that you do in work that require like the higher amount of torque and energy? Does that make sense? Because especially in the support area, if we make all the easy things for our technicians to just be like AIified, it's just solved, it's answered. We don't have to do that stuff. You don't have to do the easy stuff. You have to worry about that. Well, that's great, but now what you've done is freed up all their time to focus only on the hard stuff, and there's the peaks and the troughs. And if now all you've done is made it really hard and you always have to stay in the hard area, that contributes to burnout, exasperation, exhaustion, frustration, and that especially the frustration can leak over into other areas of the company. It'll cause frustration between support and sales, support and development. Why isn't this issue fixed? So taking time with a company to say, what are the bigger headaches, not the easiest stuff that you can do, but like what's the big headaches, and how can we fix that? How can we improve those flows and that engagement and interaction between departments and honestly inside the department? So,
What do you do when you start to get pushback when you're saying, well, we just want to automate the easy things so we can free up our agents to do the tougher things, but then you're like saying, hey, well, then you're going to break their brains, right? But then you're like, okay, well, then people come back and say, well, then how do we make them use more effective use of their times? Because what I've heard is a lot of people say, oh, we need to go away from task-based to operation-based. What is your take on that, and how do you see companies trying to make this shift?
This might sound, well, no, this, I won't say it sounds, it is critical of people that say this. We went from in office to remote work because of COVID. And one of the main discoveries that has been repeated over and over and over again is the amount of productivity that actually increased when we went remote. At the time, I was managing international support teams. And I was doing it from Utah. So I've got teams in Ireland, teams in Australia. I had a team in Philadelphia, in Phoenix, and so I was used to like being alone, but having to manage people who I couldn't see physically, and that's how I learned to manage. My partner managed the U.S., the other ends of the U.S. team at the time, and he was very much they're all in the office, check in with people, make sure they're doing okay, they've got what they need, but it was a very much in-person presence. So when we switched to remote, he really struggled. And he and I had some good conversations on how to manage people via trust. And the same thing goes with AI and the problems you're trying to solve. What do I trust people to solve? How do I use their time effectively? I don't like, and this is a personal thing, and I know people can disagree with me, but I prefer effective over efficient, because you can be really efficient and be completely ineffective. You can be closing tickets fast. You can have huge, first call resolution, for instance, and actually end up that's basic, because there's a lot of people who set that up and then don't actually pay attention to which cases are getting reopened. Effective is more important than efficient because it's its own type of efficiency. And so I want to make sure that it isn't just one or the other. You don't fix all the hard stuff, because you'll never fix all of the hard stuff. You want to find the things that will free up people's time and be able to enable them to do that faster and more effectively, not just efficiently. So it is striking a balance. It isn't just do one or the other. It is trying to find the balance. And that's really when people say, well, we've got all these easy things that can just be, automated away or AI-ified. And that's great, but you still need a human in the loop. And so that's going to redirect. Maybe they spend this time always writing the same email. I worked at a company where every case we came in, the first thing we had to do was verify that that user in the database was an admin of the organization they said they were. And for the seasoned people, that was 2 minutes. For the new people, that could be 5 to 10 minutes. And I had a new manager under me who said, well, it's just a few minutes. I'm like, okay, how many cases did we have this year? 13,000. What's 13? Let's just take the easy number and go 3. What's 13,000 times 3 minutes? And, we just go like, that's a full-time employee. Full-time employee and a half. Like, you take those and they compound. And so what you're looking for is the stuff that really compounds. The hard stuff is going to be the things that it's not going to be the everyday thing. But it's like having a pipe that's clogged, and if all you do is pull out the little weeds along the edge, but not the stone in the middle, you got to do both. So
I mean, not to oversimplify it, but it sounds like you're talking about quality versus quantity in some ways, that you want to give a really good quality product, but you just don't want to see how much quantity you can push out. I mean, to your example of the looking up something that takes 3 minutes, yeah, I think that is a good example of something that can be automated. You can do some kind of process in the background where as soon as the name comes up, it does some kind of query for you and it pulls that name, right? And then that's maybe a couple seconds versus a couple minutes. And then you're freeing someone's time to do the actual searching. I mean, the way I look at it is that we are freeing up time for things that we don't really enjoy, so we can do things that we do enjoy more. And then maybe now that we're have this free time, we're going to find out some other things that we actually enjoy more that we didn't know because we didn't have the time.
yeah.
The companies or the people that you go and help, what are these, small startups with 10 people all the way up to, multinational corporations? If they are different sizes, what have you seen the interaction be when you have a very small team versus a very big team?
The answer is it depends, because I actually find that the problem usually doesn't come from the size of the team. Sometimes if it's a widely distributed team, they're all over the place. But it's usually how long the team has been doing what they do, because they can get stuck in this. But this is the way we've always done it mindset. And so then the problem that you're having is convincing people to try something new, to challenge their own assumptions. And so smaller teams usually easier because you got less people kind of reflecting you back, the challenge back at you. And so that can happen on big teams. But I also find that newer teams, or teams that are built with a bigger, newer problem that they haven't solved, are going to be more open to hearing that approach, trying something new, changing the way they've been doing it, because they realize that with this new challenge comes new opportunities to learn things and potentially ways to try things out that they've not had the opportunity before. I find, and it probably comes just because of who we are in support, we're always interested to find new ways of doing things, because honestly, there's a lot of industry standard support behaviors that are so outdated, but that's just the way we've always done it.
I remember back when I was working my first support job, and this was phone support, and everyone was sitting side by side. You had your small cubicles,
Yep.
and I had a buddy there, and we had a chessboard, and we would be playing chess while we're on the phone with clients. And it wasn't because we were bored, it's because the work itself was just so you could tune the work out itself right, and that then you were just basically doing something else to keep that mind power. So I mean, I think that kind of works towards what you're saying about, if this is always the way we've done it, then people are going to drift. They're going to be like doing something else. That's why we have to keep them entertained. So what is something that you try to impart onto people who are saying, okay, how do we make our work enjoyable and not have this mind drift, basically?
A big part of that for me is identifying accountability. This might sound counterintuitive when I first talk about it, but I've learned over time, and I was talking to you about this earlier, that Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. But that comes to a lot of kind of one-liners that I've built in my own repertoire. And one of those is a question I ask whenever I've interviewed tier 3 engineers. Usually those are internal hires, but they're the guys, they're the product escalation people that your tier 1 and tier 2 people rely on for their knowledge of the product, right? So we've got usually a tier 2 person who says, "Oh, I can do this. I can be that guy. I know so much about the product. I can totally be the smartest guy in the room," which I am not opposed to the smartest guy in the room. I need more people smarter than me to help my teams. But the question I always ask when hiring them is, who are you accountable to? And I usually wait till somewhere in the middle and I ask that question. And I'll tell you, most of them will answer incorrectly. They'll tell me, "Oh, well, I'm accountable to you. I'm accountable to the leadership. You know, got to do the right job, make you guys happy." And and I have to tell them that's actually not right. The people you're accountable to is the tier 2 and tier 1 people. Let's say I hire you as a tier 3 and we get into a year later and I talk to your team, your product team, about what their experience is. Have they learned more? Have they gained a knowledge? What is their support experience from the customers looking like? When they have problems and they need something from you, what's your experience? Are you the guy that says, "Oh, no, 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 I'm a escalation. I don't get on phone calls with customers. That's not my job." Oh, you want to tick me off in a work position? Just start off with, "That's not my job." Or are you the person who says, "I've never seen that before. Let me dig into it. Hey, can we set up a call with the customer?" They're the people who get on the call with the technician and aren't afraid of teaching the technician in front of the customer, not because the technician doesn't know what he's doing, because it's a great opportunity for them to see it real time. It's also a good opportunity for your customer to see the way your teams interact with trust. So I want to hire people who understand that their responsibility is to the people they serve, because that's my responsibility as a leader, is to the people I serve. It's the same way that if I'm hiring a tier 1 person or a tier 2 person, I am interested in their technical base, but what I really want to understand is, how do you work with people? Even in super technical jobs, if you need to know Java and REST APIs and all these other things, great. But part of what I'm going to be asking you about is how you engage with people and experiences where that went wrong. Because at the end of the day, I can teach you our tech, but I can't teach you empathy. And empathy it's a reflection of our character. And to go back to AI, if I want something that can act like it's empathetic, that can say all the right things and do all the right things, but not actually give a damn about the person on the other side of the building, I'll just put in an AI bot for that.
I've actually worked with some people, I swear they were AI, with the lack of empathy they've had. One of the things that you said there about your tier 3 reps, about them saying, "I don't want to get on a call, this is not my responsibility." I mean, that almost feels like those people are almost being complacent then, is that they are not trying to grow themselves. If they are saying, I'm here and this is my mountain and I'm not going to go anywhere, where's the growth of them, right? If you are a person that says, "Okay, I'm going to get on a call," who knows? They might say, "Well, I've never seen that before. I've never seen our product do that." And then that's growth for them, right? And that's what we need. We need people that are constantly curious, constantly trying to figure out, why did this happen? For you, when you work with other support people, other clients, how often have you had an aha moment and you liked to share it with the client? You're like, "That's awesome. Thanks for showing that to me."
So many times. I love those moments. I love it for the customer. I love it for what I can do. And this is going to be like, I'll throw a little egg on my face here and just talk about something in my past. But I was leading a small team of a very niche product in our company. It really wasn't huge, but it was easy technically. I got everybody trained up. We were doing this thing, and the company decided to go into disaster recovery as a service. So cloud-based backup and disaster recovery. And the guy that was running that team got to a point where he's like, "I'm going to go do something else." He leaves, and I come in one morning, and our director comes over to me and says, "You're the new guy for this." And I'm like, I probably said it out loud, but inside I'm like, "I don't want to do that. I don't want that. I'm comfortable where I'm at." But the reality was the decision had been made for me. So okay, I got to do that, which means I got to learn all this stuff that I know nothing about. And And one of the first things I learned is that the person who I was replacing had kind of reversed the model. And so if any of his team got a ticket, their first job was, he had taught them that their first job was to come to him. He would take the ticket, he would answer it, and he would fix it and then close the case. They didn't, unfortunately, they didn't know anything about the product, or what they did was just barely surface level. And I realized that that was probably going to be the monster that I'd have to slay, because it's unscalable, obviously. And so I went and I sat down with the head of development for the product, and I said, can you map out for me how everything works? Like, from the moment they take the backup and they say send it to the cloud, what's happening in the background? He's like, you do know that you're not cloud ops. You're not going to be responsible for the things running in the background. And I said, 100%. I'm not asking to know what's happening in the background because I want to be responsible for it. I'm asking because if I can teach them how the system works in the back end, as they learn to actually support the product, they'll know what's happening in the background. So when a customer says, hey, I did this and got this X error message, they'll know that it got through the initial FTP, it got converted into the storage file, and that when we ran it, the networking in the back end failed. And that's going to require this. And so I'm going to understand where the machinery is, so I can now communicate not only better troubleshooting, but when I need to go back to the development team, I'll be able to tell them exactly where I'm at. We spent 8 hours with whiteboards and, like, you know, crazy aliens. Like, it was wild, to the point where the VP came in and he's like, Tom, is this the best use of your time? And he's like, absolutely. Like, this is going to be amazing for support, for our team, for the product. And bless Jawad's heart, he was like, okay, I trust you, to Tom. And I took everything we learned, turned it into 4 different training sessions, and then I trained my team in the US, the Australian and European teams as well, so that they knew, like, all of our developments here in the US office. So if somebody in Australia needs something from the dev team and they don't know anything about the product, it's like there's such a massive delay in response and answer times, but then also just in translation. So now all these teams have lesson 1, how does it work? Lesson 2, what does the user experience look like? And lesson 3, what does my administration of that look like? And then lesson 4 was actually not taught by me, it was taught by my team lead in the US, which was troubleshooting. It was direct experiences from people who had been in the trenches the longest. And that wasn't me. I was the lead. I wanted them to hear it from another person who was in the trenches with them. I look back on that now with both a lot of pride for what we accomplished, but also a lot of chagrin but I don't want to do that. Man, if I had answered with curiosity, we would have been in a much better situation much sooner.
I mean, I remember an example where when I came back from Korea and I was working at a company, they said, hey, there's this account that no one wants. If you take it on, you get to give 2 away, the accounts you don't want. And my first response was, I don't want that account. But because of that, it forced me to go talk to marketing. It forced me to go talk to engineering. So even though it was an account I didn't want, it made me grow. And I hear what you're saying. We learn when we're uncomfortable. We learn when we're in an area that doesn't feel safe to us. One thing that I really like that you said, though, going back to your whole whiteboarding, is you did something there that I'm a huge advocate of, and it is taking all of the trouble knowledge that is spread out across the company, support, and you're like, I'm going to put it right here in one spot, and I'm going to record it for people, so now others can benefit from this. So I absolutely love that people proactively try to take tribal knowledge and make it so other people can learn it. Looking across your whole career, what would you say has been the best aha moment for you?
It's actually going to reverberate across what you just said. And I use it all the time, and people think it's morbid. And so I've rearranged it. Initially, my question, like my statement for myself is, I know I'm doing the job right when, if I walk out the door and get hit by a bus, the team doesn't get phased. They know what to do. They understand not only the how to fix it, but the why, the how do we do, what are we supporting, why we're here. Why are we using, why do we have support set up in the way we do? We understand that the metrics we use to hold ourselves accountable are chosen because they reflect XYZ characters. They aren't just, it is like, you can still have industry standard support metrics, and that's fine, but it's really most valuable when you understand what story does each of those metrics tell about the support team, their goals, their mission and vision, and the way we want to treat customers. And so in everything I do, in everything I train other people to do, when I say train other people, like I do this when I'm working with IT teams, when I'm working with product teams, development teams, is the idea that the most successful person in the room is going to be the person who's thinking about, how do I set everyone else here up for success in case I leave the company one day and hop on a bus and they never see me again. That's the nicer version than getting hit by the bus. And it proves massively influential to people when they see what happens. And this is because I would rather hire a B player that makes the team better than an A player that makes the team bitter. And like that difference, if you got a 5-person team and you hire the 6th person, and maybe they're not the smartest person in the room, but they're the person who looks at things, who's curious, and brings others in to learn with them. By the end of the next year, you're going to have people who are going up a grade across the team. Whereas if you've got this guy and he's a white knight and he says, I'm always going to be the person to save the day, he's not going to share his information because that might make him look weak or worth less. They don't know how to do that. The team is going to suffer worse because they can't compare to this person, and sometimes they get the wrong idea that they should even compare to that person. And so it breeds frustration and resentment and other things in the area. So like, I love smart people in the room, but I don't hire smart jerks. I will say it. Yeah, anyway, like I'd rather have a B player that makes the team better than an A player that makes the team bitter. Because at the end of the day, that B player knows how to teach people how to make the team solid for the day you lose that person. So, people are like, "Oh, I want job security." You want job security? Be the person who teaches everybody how to do your job and why you do your job.
Well said. Well said. I've worked with a lot of people who have been like that, where they're like, the curious people are the ones that I think leadership teams look at and saying, that person just is never satisfied. They want to keep learning. We should keep this person around because they are always constantly curious. So we are reaching near the end of our time here. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. It was quite amazing. I like to end every episode on a saying that I came up with, and I'd love to get your interpretation on it.
Yes.
So the way I end my episodes is I say that support isn't just a job, support is a mindset. What does that mean to you?
You don't do 30 years in support if you don't love it. And my number one catchphrase, whenever somebody says, "Hey, you got a minute?" My number one response is, "How can I help?" Because that's my mindset. How can I, like, outside of work, outside of anything, my question is, how can I help? It's who I am. And I find that that's very much the case with so many people in support. We tend to be givers more than takers, and we give of ourselves. And it's one of the reasons we're so darn good at what we do. But I 100% agree that support is a mindset. And you know what? Some people have it for a certain amount of time. Some people come into support and they can do it for so long, and then they're like, "Oh, I am sick of customers." And you know what? That's okay. They need to do something different. They can move on. I'm not gonna, like, we had them while they were using it. The worst thing we can do is keep somebody on who's become jaded and bitter. Like, let's find a way for them to move into something where they can bring joy back into themselves and the work that they do. But, like, I also believe, and I say this to support leaders, and they cringe, and they look at me like I'm crazy, like, why would you ever say that? It's simply that no one wants to talk to your support. Doesn't matter if you want to delight them or anything else, like, straight up, no one wants to talk to your support. And I have people love talking to our support. I said, that's not what I said. I said, they don't want, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call Amazon support today just because. They don't want to have the problem. They've got, even unspoken, they've got a billion different things they would much rather do. And the reality is some people hear that and they think, oh, that's a really jaded perspective. And it's not. By realizing the truth of it, every time the customer reaches out via ticket, an email, a phone call, if I have that in the back of my head, if I have that in my heart, I can remember that that's a real person on the other end of the line who has other things impacting their life that they would much rather be spending this time and energy on. And so it's important enough that they're talking to me. I get to see the human in that person, regardless of how angry, frustrated, happy, kind, whatever emotion they bring into that interaction. I can both recognize it, but also see them. And that means my support. And if my team is thinking that, if they have that mindset, my customers are in good hands.
Very well said. I think, that's why I think a lot of people say put a mirror by your desk, and if you can see yourself smiling, that means you're happy, and that other people on the other side, well, when we did have phone support, other people can hear that smile.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, it was an absolute pleasure to speak with you today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, Andre.